Okay, welcome everyone to today's Komiti Hanganga, the Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee meeting, 8th of May. Emergency procedures, I think most people in the room are very familiar with those, but they're on the screen if you need a reminder. I'd invite everyone to join with me in the karakia timatanga. Mino tātou, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. He aki ana ti a tā kura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei maudiora. Apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Tupou and Councillor Barrett, and the Mayor has indicated he will be running late. So I'll move those apologies and lateness request. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Stellinger, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare that carried. Public comment. We have two lots of public comment today, both on the same subject. I'd like to welcome our diligent regional councillor, Quentin Duffy, who's going to speak to us, I understand, on the Taitā Connections program. Welcome, Quentin. You'll be familiar. You've got 3 minutes to speak to us and a couple of minutes left over for questions. Cheers.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora koutou. So diligent that I'm doubling with a council workshop at Greater Wellington at the same time. So just trying to remember the topic. Yeah, so 4 quick points to make around the Taitā Connections paper. So firstly is just how exciting and awesome it is what you have committed to do in Nainai Taitā Avalon Triangle. I talked to a number of parents and people living in that area and quite excited by the safety improvements and what's to come for that community, and the increased access between important facilities like Walter Nash Stadium, Fraser Park, the Nainai train station, and Avalon Park, etc. Second point relates to the connection to the river trail at the corner of Harcourt Wherry Drive and Taitā Drive. So in the paper I see that your officers are working closely with Greater Wellington to find a solution to connect that, which is wonderful to hear. And I don't really have anything to add to that, but if I could be of any assistance, I'm happy to help. That's a really, to my mind, it's a really important that that area of the northern suburbs of Lower Hutt have a good connection to the river trail. It's a major recreational and taio asset for Lower Hutt, and we in Belmont have got good access. People in Petone and Alistair, Moira and so on have good access. It's really important that our northern suburbs in Taitā have access. And the access points at the moment, there's a good one on the Beltway at the northern end of Taitā Pōmari, across Taitā Drive there. There's a one at Avalon Park that is a little bit of a headache because it's a 70k road, but that will in time I think be improved for a safe connection there between Avalon Park, really important facility, and the river trail. And the one in between I think is Fraser Park, is the one to connect that sort of middle area of Taitā and Avalon, and even Nainai coming across the railway line and getting through to the river trail. So I would like to ask, my third point is that the pedestrian crossing proposed, which is fantastic, across Taitā Drive, just near where the path that follows the stream, I've lost the name, at Fraser Park basically, the pedestrian crossing at Taitā Drive at Fraser Park, I think it would be valuable to make that a raised crossing. There are a number of speed cushions along Taitā Drive, so motorists expect those. I mean, it's part of that road now, and people avoid it if they don't like speed cushions, and that it calms the traffic. There is actually one quite close to where this pedestrian crossing is proposed to be, and I would actually suggest you remove that one and just make the pedestrian crossing a raised crossing as a more permanent, less of a very quick boom boom up and down type speed hump, and more of a slow down for the pedestrian crossing, check the visibility, cross and carry on. So I think that would actually work quite well. I recognise it's a bit more expensive than a level crossing. And then a bit further afield, when I spoke last time, I spoke in relation to the other key crossings, more closer to Nainai and Avalon, one across Oxford Terrace near Nainai Intermediate and one from Nainai College across towards Avalon Park. I'm not sure where we've got to in terms of the choice between level versus raised on those. I guess I'm a bit biased. My two children bike or walk to school at Nainai College, Nainai Intermediate from Belmont, and so they cross daily at the High Street one. And I think that would be good to be a raised crossing because of the connection of the community of Nainai through to Avalon Park being really important. To the river trail, as mentioned earlier, the school thoroughfare, those schools do serve the suburb of Belmont, and Kelson are part of the school zone for those two schools. So there's a lot of children daily, both on our buses and cycling and walking to school, and we want to encourage more of that. So I don't know, I'd be interested in an update at some point as to where we've got to with those crossings. So those are my 4 points. Thank you very much.
Some well-made points there, Quentin. You took my words out of my mouth on Taitā Drive because my thinking is the same. Councillor, any questions for Councillor Duffy? Excellent input. Thank you very much, Quentin. Now, our other piece of public comment has come in written from Ben and Anita Martel, who can't be here. And I understand that Councillor Mitchell is going to read out that submission.
Thank you. Yeah, the submission is from Anita, although I'm sure her partner Ben takes every opportunity to agree with her. I'll just read it out verbatim. To the councillors and council staff, I wanted to say a massive thank you for what you have done and are doing for the Taitā community in implementing these safety features and putting in pedestrian crossings for our community and for everyone who comes to Taitā. While it might seem a little bit of expensive paint and hard work to get here, for this community, these changes are well overdue and will bring such a positive impact to how tamariki move around, how families get from A to B. I would encourage you to continue the improvements, e.g. focusing on Harcourt Wherry and a safe passage for Taitā Central families to cross Churton Crescent. So again, thank you. I can't wait to see the first lot of paint being placed on the road and for a continued partnership to make Taitā safer.
Excellent. Good submission. All right. Serendipitously, our first topic is Micromobility Community Connections Taitā. So I'd invite Paul Hewitt, Head of Transport, and Rawiri Kennedy, Transport Project Manager, to present their report or highlight to us anything extra to what we have in front of us. Could I interrupt, as I've done in the past? I always skip conflict of interest declarations. Is there any councillor that needs to make declare a conflict of interest? Thank you. All right. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. This report is seeking approval of the Taitā Community Connections shared pathway to proceed to construction. Since the committee last reviewed the plans, there have been some alignment changes that have been made to the plans that have been presented in the report. These include an updated pedestrian and cycle crossing on Toka Street, which is at the intersection of Toka and Reynolds Street. There is also a revised connection point to the river trail through Fraser Park, which will improve safety and the user experience and align with the Greater Wellington Regional Council's planting infrastructure. Now, the final connection through to connect with the river trail is still being designed and will be presented to the committee at a later date once we've got the design there completed. I'd also note that the report has excluded the specifics of pedestrian crossing treatments, that being whether they'd be raised platforms or level zebra crossings, as the authority to approve these designs was delegated to the Mayor and Chairs of Standing Committees by Council their last meeting in March. There's a couple of changes to the plans that have been presented in this report on further reviews. There will be additionally to the proposed crossing points, they'll be upgraded to dual crossings, that being cycle and pedestrian crossings at 3 locations, one being 1040 Taitā Drive, another 30 Tain Street, and the final 7 Toka Street. We're also proposing to move the crossing on Pierce Crescent to align with the walkway running from Reynolds Street and Milne Crescent to Pierce Crescent. So there'll be a straight run through from the alleyway to the crossing point rather than a slight zigzag to cross the road. Also noting that barriers on alleyways will be removed in the project zone to better improve passage through from the existing alleyways onto the shared path, although we will install a bollard or something similar to prevent motorised vehicles accessing the alleyways to preserve the safety of any cyclists or pedestrians using them. We're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Councillors, questions? Who's going to kick us off? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, if I could just start with one from this public comment I read out, which was a suggestion to take a look at a crossing on Churton Crescent for the primary school there. And we are literally putting a crossing in front of Pōmari School up the other end of Taitā. They're both away from the shared path that's coming through. So I just wonder if the budget allows for it, if we could consider an additional crossing there at Churton Crescent.
Thank you, Councillor. Our intention is, once we're underway with the construction of both Avalon and Taitā and well into these projects, we'll be able to accurately review how much surplus, if you want for a better word, there may be, and we'll present options to councillors as to where that might be best utilised. Obviously, there's a lot of, we've got a number of requests for pedestrian crossings across the city, so we can, they've all been reviewed and prioritised, so we can present that to council to look at these options in the future.
Thank you. And without digging into the detail of the plans just yet, one thing that stuck out to me was that the main stretch of Taitā Street, this has been through a few iterations now. I remember when there was going to be a cycle path all the way down Taitā Street, and I think the most recent plans we saw made a shared path along what's now the footpath to the front of Walter Nash Centre, and now there seems to be nothing there. The cyclists are directed into the slip lane, I guess it is, or car park, approaching Walter Nash Centre from the west. So I was just wondering why that decision has been taken to not really connect the main part of Taitā Street.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Chair. Yeah, the decision was made there to put the cyclist out onto the car park, whether it be the sharrow markings to present to warning motorists of cyclist presence, because there was worry, looking at previous notes around this, about the interactions of people coming out of the various facilities down Taitā Street, being the Walter Nash, the netball courts and the shops, that there could be some incidents with cyclists and pedestrians travelling at the perpendicular to the path the cyclists are taking, hence where you've got a lot of those movements coming out of buildings. It was felt that it was best for the cyclists to go onto the roadway.
I'll slide in one more while the chair's not.
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
I think that particularly around this Taitā area, and it is really the centre of the town centre of Taitā, this big block that we're putting all these interventions around. There's some great stuff proposed there that will calm traffic around there. I think I mentioned at the last meeting I'd visited on, I can't even remember what day of the week it was, and you couldn't move for netball traffic anyway. The functional speed of the road that day was about 5 kilometres an hour. Is this area a good prospect for us applying to the government, and I understand the rules have changed now, applying to permanently lower the speed just around that block, maybe not including High Street, but the other 3 streets surrounding it? Is this a good candidate for applying to lower the speed in future to, say, 30 kilometres along those streets, just to make it even more safe?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, through the Chair, yes, areas like this where you've got sort of more like pedestrian traffic are candidates for speed reductions in the future, yes.
How might we get that underway, Paul? Would that need some resolution of committee for instructing officers that we want that to be a 30-kilometre-an-hour zone, or is that something that you'll take up and report back to us? What's best?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we could take that up and start moving that forward. There are a few others we would like to present to Council on the time, so we'll include this one as well.
I've got Councillor Dyer and then Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. Obviously, we consulted on these plans with the community in 2023. I don't think we have seen the community feedback on that. Firstly, how many car parks are we losing, particularly on Reynolds Street, which was now double yellow lines on both sides of the street? All the parking is going. My read is about 30 car parks. So firstly, how many car parks are we losing through this? And two, is that what we consulted on? And did we get feedback about that? And this is still the recommendation.
Yeah, on a review of the plans, what's been presented to Council now and what was approved in November 23, Reynolds Street is, as it was consulted back in 2023. I couldn't tell you off the cuff how many car parks are being lost. We'd have to come back to you with that and with the consultation feedback.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that consultation we did was the changes that Councillor Mitch was talking about outside Walter Nash of being like a one-way big ring road, and that did have even more car park loss. That we've now kind of pulled it back to what's proposed, which is still some parking loss, but not as much as we consulted on.
Through the Chair, I understand there have been a number of iterations of this project as things have been pulled in and pushed out. Exactly what was in the consultation, I couldn't say exactly.
John has got some information for us.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor, there was quite a lot of car parks proposed outside Walter Nash and around the courts around there, which were removed following consultation last time. Given, as we've all commented on, it's a high traffic, high footfall area, particularly after school and weekends with sports. So it just wasn't feasible in any way to remove those car parks, so they were left as is.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
I think this might be a detailed question, but it's just something you said, Paul, about removing barriers at the end of the alleyways. And I'm just conscious, I know in Wainuiomata, for instance, coming onto the main road, their alleyways have just got like arms up that you have to manoeuvre through to get onto the footpath into the crossing. It just slows speedy children down. So is that what you were saying, removing those, or is there something going to be there?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Chair, based on feedback from previous meetings, there were requests to remove the barriers to enable cycle passage onto the alleyways, so basically the shared paths could carry through there. We're just looking to install a bollard or something similar to stop quad bikes, motorbikes and what have you accessing the alleyways.
Dyer.
Obviously, the report mentions the conversation that's happening with GW around that last connection. Do we have any indication on timeframes to get that across the line? Or is it worth putting a recommendation in to make sure it kind of gets followed through for, or are you confident it'll happen?
So, thank you, Councillor. So conversations have already been on site with GW and designers. A rough time frame for implementation is looking like summer. Yeah, the summer construction period. So, yeah, we're working at pace to try and put that together and get it back in front of the committee.
And one final question was just, obviously there's some more major changes around the BP with the new shared pathway kind of taking up what's their parking, which I'm assuming is not their parking, but it's their parking. But there's already an existing sort of like walkway around the forecourt. Have we had a good conversation with BP about the changes we're doing and what's going to happen with that existing footpath? Because I'm assuming it's going to connect to nothing now that we're moving the shared path down where we're moving it to.
Yeah, so those difficult thank you, Councillor. Those difficult conversations have been started. The land that those trailers are currently parked on is council land, so yes, the conversation has started with them.
So will that hatch sort of pedestrian, that random bit, will that be removed because the new path's going to be down here now?
It won't be removed. The line marking will change though and
Okay.
direct people more towards the dual crossing that we proposed putting in there.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on this report? Okay, just to note, we've got a slightly awkward situation in that the previous INR meeting delegated authority, the mayor and chairs, to make decisions on whether crossings for Taitā or Avalon should be raised or not raised or whatever. And so that stands. But I do note that everyone present here, with the exception of Councillor Stellinger, is on mayor and chairs, which makes the situation easier. But if Councillor Stellinger in particular, if you've got anything that any thoughts in particular on those crossings, it would be good to hear them in this meeting. But to get things underway, there is some recommendations in front of us, which I will move, and that is that we receive and note this report. Note that the Community Connections Program Taitā plans were presented to Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee for approval 23 November 2023. Notes that on 25 March 2025, the Hutt City Council received an update on the Micromobility program and approves option A, which is to proceed with the Taitā Community Connection plans for construction. So I'll move those. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stellinger. Comment. Anyone wish to make comment? Councillor Mitchell.
The only small comment I'll make is that I agree with the last point raised by Councillor Dyer. You can see a bit in this map the kind of conflict happening around that BP corner with, I guess it's private use of public land by the garage there. And if you look at the street view of it, it's even worse. So I don't know if there's anything physical we can do to delineate that, and of course have conversations with the owners of those businesses there too, but there's quite a lot of encroachment of that public land, which could make things complicated through this area here. So yeah, definitely something worth exploring a little bit more with the owners there. And it's really clear when you see where the property boundaries are, and they're on the map here, that there's a large piece of, unfortunately, I think, concreted land there that makes it feel like a car park for them, or somewhere to throw their trailers on the lawn or whatever, and maybe some planting through that area in future could make it clear that that's not the purpose of that land. But thank you to the officers. The changes that you've suggested through this paper all make a lot of sense, so thank you for those.
Any further comment? Okay, well, I'd just like to say that I think this is this design is looking sound, and you know, we'll have a discussion at Mayor and Chairs about crossings. But it's very unfortunate, in my view, that the government has pulled back on and left councils to carry the bag on cycling improvements like this. But I'm proud that this council has seized that challenge and has, in a tight funding round, has found the money to continue progress on micromobility and progress on all the things that come with it in terms of health of people and fewer emissions and making it safer for kids to get to school and for commuters. So the recommendations have been moved and seconded. Councillor Stellinger has got comment.
Yes, sorry, a bit belated there, but just responding to your prompting earlier, Chair. You're uncomfortable with the decisions of the Mayor and Chair. I do have some sympathy for the item referred in the comment that you supported, so I'd be happy if that change was made as well.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll put those recommendations. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Three Waters update. We're on page 45 of the agenda. And I'd invite Hamish Bell, Advisor, Water Services, and Bruce Hodgins, Strategic Advisor, on that topic to highlight to us anything in addition to the written material in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora everyone. Pleased to be here in my new capacity, so thank you. I'm happy to take the report as read today. Just want to highlight a few things for you, and then Bruce and I will take any questions you've got. Just an update on the CapEx program for 24-25. So Wellington Water have today advised us that the spend in April was below the forecast at about $6.7 million. They also advised us that the forecast for the year end is tracking towards the low $60 million mark. So this will mean the CapEx spend for May and June will be lower than what is indicated in the graph under paragraph 4 that you've got there. Since the Value for Money report came out, Council has been requiring competitive tendering across our CapEx program, and this has had the effect of slowing the program down, including the pipe renewals work. If you look at the graph under paragraph 9, the actual metres of pipe renewed in April and the metres to be renewed in May and June will be lower than what's projected there. You will have seen that critical maintenance is required on the Seaview wastewater treatment plant, and that will require it being taken offline for about 2 weeks for some component renewals. As you advised at the briefing last night, Wellington Water and Viola have confirmed this work will take place for 2 weeks from the 3rd to the 17th of June. As this work may lead to some increased odour levels, Wellington Water have a comprehensive communications plan so the community is aware. There will be letters going out to residents in the vicinity of the plant, engagement with the Seaview Interested Parties group, and a community meeting that has been tentatively scheduled for the 28th of May. On local water done well, as you'll be aware, all councils in the Wellington metro area have been consulting with their communities on the future of the water services in the region. Submissions for our residents closed 20th of April. We received 282 submissions and officers are currently analysing those for you. And just finally, the work to reline the part of the Western Hills sewer main over the school holiday period completed on time and under budget with minimal disruption to commuters. Happy to take any questions.
Councillors, any questions? Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, just a few quick ones. You mentioned the graph on page 4, and we can see now that the spend isn't tracking to what was budgeted. It's also noticeable in that graph that the budget for the last 3 months of the year was quite large compared to the rest of the year, and I just wondered what the large spending that was anticipated in this period represents.
So much of that last 3 months was anticipated to be work in the wastewater treatment plant, so that takes up a fair amount, and that isn't programming to that timing at this stage, so it's a little bit further and it's going to move into next year. It also relates to some renewals work, but this budget has been spread in this way. This is the first year of the LTP, is that right? Am I right there? Yes, I am. And it's quite regularly that's the spread occurs in this way for that first year, so it's not uncommon for that to happen with works being programmed later on.
Thank you. My next question is about the wastewater treatment plant, and in paragraph 31 it talks about the replacement of milli screens taking place between 2024 and 2029. And I just wondered actually, and even when it talks about the new assets being ordered in 2025, June 2025, some of those will be installed through to 2027. So I was wondering why that is taking place over a fairly long period of time. Is that a matter of spreading cost, or is there a technical reason that they can't be done faster?
I will need to go and talk to Wellington Water and get back to you on that, because I don't know the answer to that from a technical point of view.
Thank you. And just a final one on local water done well consultation. Thank you for the indication of the way our consultation fell. I wonder if you'd heard from any of our neighbouring councils, some of whom included different options altogether from what we consulted on.
Yes, we have, and in the report back to council, we will be covering off the other councils and the results of their consultation, because some of the councillors in other areas have yet to understand that. I'm not at liberty to really say, other than maybe to indicate that they're not dissimilar to ours.
Deputy Mayor Lewis?
Thank you, Hamish and Bruce. The report on page, 54 talks about monthly sampling, and it's referring to E. coli levels. I just wondered, is that Wellington Water doing that, and is it something, I don't know if the committee's interested in seeing the correlation between that, the work that's happening at the Seaview Water Plant, and, you know, mapping it as to where the E. coli levels are, or do we get that when it's blown out, like when it is in the red zone?
This is a requirement of our consents with GW, so this is across the whole network. This is not necessarily in relation directly with the Seaview plant. So this is just to ensure that we're monitoring what is happening across the city with our wastewater network, that there aren't leaks in it, etc. And so they have specific sites around the city which they have this monthly requirement to do, and that feeds into the program that we have presented on before, whereby Wellington Water have a team that goes out and does these inspections and finds where there are leaks, both in the public side of the network and the private side, and arranges for those to be fixed.
Follow up, it's just the mapping of the E. coli, they've said there they've got sample plans, and I'm assuming they're mapping it where they are. Is that something that we could see if the committee was interested, just to see what's happening over a period, say 6 monthly mapping or something like that?
Sure, we can provide some information along those lines, yes.
Very good. Councillor Stellinger.
Yes, pleased to see in our reports we've got some information on the pipe backlogs. It's good to keep a track of that given the size of the issue we're facing there, and just to be aware of where it's at. I'm wondering, do we know, aside from the pipes, the backlog of other water assets and the value of that to replace?
I don't have any specific information on that. The pipe network makes up the vast majority of the asset, along with the reservoirs, the pumping stations, and the wastewater treatment plant. Now, with the wastewater treatment plant, you heard yesterday that a lot of the plant's coming to the end of its life, and so that's why there's some big money coming into our budgets to renew that. In terms of reservoirs, what I do know, we've had a program in place to make sure that they're strengthened, because some of them had earthquake issues, and there were some issues in terms of ensuring the health of the you know, where there's been degradation, that they've fixed that to them. The other issue that is coming up that you'll be looking at, I suppose, as part of the annual plan report is future reservoirs. And so in a number of our reservoirs, we have a situation, and that's why we're embarking on the Eastern Hills for a start. We don't have the necessary capacity if there is an incident, so to meet the guidelines. So the guidelines would be a minimum of 24 hours, let's say, and we might only have 12 or 15 or something like that. And so looking at those sorts of issues, they are certainly an area where investment will need to be directed.
Just to follow up if I can. So would it be fair to say that aside from the wastewater treatment plant components, which are clearly beyond their useful life because we know they're failing regularly, that we have a lot of investment required, but it's more of a nature of we haven't quite kept up with the growth in demand in some cases and our ability to supply it, like with the reservoirs, the need for improved resilience. Nevertheless, these are all huge dollars involved, I'm sure, and I'm not trying to diminish them, but they're kind of like a different category to things that I suppose we should have done in the past, which was definitely the pipes, as we've been discussing. Would that kind of a fair assessment?
Yes, I think, strategically, Wellington Water and the councils have agreed to prioritise expenditure according to, and I think there's 5 or 6 priorities, and the first one is about dealing with what we've got at the moment and maintaining it. And growth sits in there, resilience and other things. So there is a hierarchy that is used to determine where the priorities are because, there's quite a long list of work that could be done.
Any further questions, councillors? All right. I'll move that the committee receives the report and notes the information. Looking for a seconder. Deputy Mayor Lewis, thank you. Any further comment to make? Councillor Stellinger.
Just a quick one in relation to the information update on the capital works. Just to say that more than happy if things are delayed and take a little bit longer, if it means we're investing more time in the tendering processes and the changes there to make sure we get good value for money.
Yes, I'd agree with that. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, happy to second that comment too. It's good that we are going through a more thorough process, and I assume that the delays that we're facing now are because it's a new process and that longer time periods for quoting on projects will be built in future, so future projects won't be delayed in the same way they have been. It's just an interim measure. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, the recommendation has been moved and seconded. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. We're on to regulatory matters now, page 54 of the agenda. And we've got Tim Johnson, Head of Planning, Richard Barton, Head of Building Control, and Justin Roberts, Head of Environmental Protection. Welcome, gentlemen. You can take the report as read, but there may be some extra things you want to bring to our attention.
Nothing from me. No.
No.
Very good. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just a couple of brief ones from me. The first one you might not know the answer to, but in the table of notable consents, I was just curious about 34 Harris Street in Nainai and 11 lot subdivision, 11 dwellings and earthworks, and whether you're able to advise us if that's a kāinga order project or not.
Sorry, I can't, but it's an easy question to come back to you on. Yeah.
On the same page, down the bottom of the page, and it talks about compliance, and it talks about a property which didn't comply with conditions prior to commencing operation for a car yard. And I wondered, presumably they have started operating. Is there anything in the consenting process that allows us to tell someone you can't actually start operating until you've met all the conditions of the consent, or is that outside the scope of a consent?
No, we could do that. There's different levels of enforcement action. One is the general approach is it a please explain issue? Will it happen quickly? In other words, an informal approach. The next one is fining. The next one is abatement. And probably the one you're talking about is the highest level where we would seek an interim enforcement order. So generally we work through that approach, and if we're getting agreement and we have a time frame and we're happy with that, we would take that approach rather than basically spending the costs of going for an interim enforcement order. But I do want to say it's very much, you measure the kind of the nature of the breach, and we certainly have gone to the enforcement order before, but it's really about the scale of effect and whether the consent holder is working with us. Is that, yeah.
Councillor Stellinger.
It's just a question out of general interest, really. Kind of stems from a neighbour leaning over the fence and espousing a few woes with a development he's working on. And the thing that just caught my eye, and the reason for the question, is he had a piece of correspondence which was not from the council, but from, I suppose, an outsourced agency acting on our behalf or fulfilling those consenting requirements. So my question is, given the reduction in volumes, are we still having to make use of contractors, I suppose, or other firms to process consents and the like?
It's probably a couple of questions, one from resource and building. Certainly in the resource consent side of things, we are minimising consultants as much as possible. There are a few that we still have to rely on consultants, one, because it might be a skills issue in the team. We're holding a vacancy at the moment in the resource consents team, and that's a senior vacancy. So there is certainly some that if we don't have the skills to go out, then we will need to use an external consultant. And there's some applications that have had a certain consultant on them for a long time. So in the interest of both consistency and in the interest of that applicant, they are happy for that consultant to carry on. Waipounamu Heights and Kelson is a good example where we use an external consultant, but you'll know that's a very large, complicated development. So minimising, but we are still using some consultants when we need to.
A similar situation in the building team with a couple of exceptions. We generally try and keep our use of contractors down to a minimum and use it for ebbs and flows where required. In the inspections team, we've been able to remove the need for contractors for large periods of time. But if and when things pick up, we will re-engage them. On the processing side, we're holding 3 vacancies open for senior building inspections. So we've got a shortage in that area. So we're routinely at the moment sending out work to contractors for processing, particularly commercial consents and some residential larger residential developments.
Could Councillor Dye, you go first, and then I'll have one.
Cool. I've just got one question on paragraph 19. It's talking about the code of compliance certificates. It has a comment there. I'm just keen to get a bit more information about it. Where it says the performance has started to decline and will continue to do so for all of April because we are going through a data cleansing exercise correcting records back to 2004. Just, yeah, keen to understand a bit more about that because the slight tapering off of issuing within statutory days is trending downwards at a time that we know the number of CCCs is actually going down. So just kind of keen to understand a bit more about that project.
So as part of our kind of internal quality assurance program, we've identified that there's a requirement for after 24 months for us to make a decision on a CCC, regardless of whether an application has been received or not. Historically, we haven't always made that decision, or if we haven't always communicated that decision. So we're going back through our records as far as 2004, I believe, to ensure that we've actually got a record and a decision that's been made where it should have been made. So it's historic things that we're dealing with, but because we are making a decision, it'll turn up on it's a date that decision's made that it turns up on our stats. So that's kind of what's happening at the moment.
Is that just an exercise that happened in April and now we're kind of back to processing the normal?
Still going on at the moment.
Or
it's still going on at the moment. We're still going through that process. We've got about another few hundred to go through.
Okay. And do you think it's going to have a material impact on processing just normal BAU CCCs that are coming in the door?
Not significantly, no.
Cool. Thank you.
Could I sneak in a question that is possibly more to do with the District Plan Subcommittee than this committee, but there is a lot of information in this report on what is being included in our LIMS. So I guess this is one for Tim. I read a column recently by someone in the insurance world who was saying that noticing an increasing number of Section 74 notices written on LIMS, which means, according to this person, that landowner may not be eligible for Natural Hazard Commission components of any insurance claims when there's a Section 74 on their limb. And I know we put on our limb information that we have about flooding and slope risk and all that kind of thing. Is Section 74 notices something that we use as well? And are our residents aware if we do use those?
Sorry, I don't think we can answer that here. I think it might refer to Section 74 of the Building Act, but something we need to check.
Can I come back to you? Can I come back to you outside this meeting?
That would be fine. Yeah, I did spring that one somewhat. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, there's no more questions for these gentlemen. Then I'll move that we receive this report and note the information in it. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Stallinger. Anyone wish to make comment? Move that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried. We're off to page 70 now for the minutes of the Local Alcohol Policy Hearing Subcommittee. I don't think there's going to be any questions on this, but I will note that there is, as part of those minutes, there's a little comment that our legal counsel was going to investigate whether it can be made as a condition of off-licence that the licensee not offer any buy now, pay later alcohol schemes, and the members of the hearing panel were very much against that option for buying alcohol for obvious reasons. And I was interested the other day signing off an off-licence for a local licensee that indeed that was a condition, that that licensee not offer any buy now, pay later alcohol thing. So obviously it is an option for us and our officers are enforcing it. So are there any are people happy with the accuracy of those minutes? Okay, well, I'll move that the minutes of the hearing subcommittee held on 17th September into our local alcohol policy be adopted. Councillor Mitchell has seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Page 78, minutes of the Alcohol Fees Bylaw Hearings Subcommittee. I'm sure you've all read the report. I'll move the motion that the minutes of the Komiti Iti Whakawa Hearing Subcommittee held on 26 September into our Alcohol Fees Bylaw be adopted. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Dyer. Any comment? Move those all in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Page 82, the Economy and Development Director's Report. And we've got John to speak to us.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll take the paper as read. I'm just going to just give a brief update on Te Pūrahorenuku last week and during the gentle southerly. You'll be obviously well aware of the significant weather event we did have, and the seawall performed really well. So the key, I mean, when you get a king tide with that wind and those swells, they will go over the top of the seawall and on the road, but that's to be expected with that height. The key thing is, though, the condition of the road and underneath was intact, so there was no issues with that, and that's about as strong as we're going to get. There were a couple of sections that some work needed to be done in a hurry, which we're being prepared for the seawall to go in. One in Mahina Bay, and there's some large boulders put in at a great rate of knots on Thursday afternoon before high tide, which protected underneath the road in that area really well, and then a little area in Lowry Bay, which was opened up, so which has been dealt with and closed up really quickly. Really good feedback from the community around the speed of cleaning up as well, because there's a significant amount of debris washed over to the road on those couple of days on Thursday and Friday. So just wanting to reiterate, the seawall's done its job. It did really well. A lot of the waves were propelled back, but the bigger ones washed back with no damage. Eastern Hutt Road, so we're expecting a decision from NZTA at the end of the month around funding for Eastern Hutt Road. So we'll update you straight after that. If it's, regardless of whatever that outcome is, if it's full funding of what we've asked for, we'll give you a timeline of what's going to happen when in the prioritised sites. Noting that the area below the road, north of the roundabout, is the pressing one. So should there not be full funding, we'll come back with a suggestion as to which sites we'd prioritise going with first. So that'll be in the next report. Other than that, I'm open to any questions.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. I probably should know this, but just in relation to following the storm and all the clean-up that's happening, and it is great that the bays and Eastbourne got cleaned up really good. I noticed Porch Road is really bad as well, and there's major works going on there to clean up the river, dumped everything onto Port Road, and the Esplanade has still got a whole lot of cleaning up. My question is relating to the contract. Is that factored into the contract, or is that on top extra?
I'll hand over to Paul on that one.
And add on to that, is there a time frame they have to clean up in?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, yes, there is an allowance in the contracts for clean-up, well, in our budgets as well. There is an allowance for storm clean-ups, assuming they do happen and we do have to clean up afterwards. With respect to the timeframes for the clean-up, depends how bad the storm is, I guess, how long is a piece of string. Obviously, the crews are out straight away trying to clean up and get roads open immediately. Opening the carriageways and get the footpaths clear are a priority. So there are crews out even during the storms trying to clear some of that debris away. For example, Marine Drive, after the initial storm on the Thursday morning, also the initial high tide, crews are out trying to get that road out and as serviceable as possible. And then they're back in to tidy up thereafter. But in terms of timeframes, they're out straight away while it's safe to do so.
And through you, Chair, sorry, can I just add, when some of you remember NZTA were consulting on changing the funding thresholds for storms from 1 in 10-year event to 1 in 20, and then also reducing the amount of money they would pay, that they have paused on that and gone back to the drawing board after universal council feedback, I think, across the country. So, but we're not sure if that's a 1 in 10-year event or not, but we're getting all the receipts, everything ready to go to make the claim based from the event last week. So, and then hopefully not one tomorrow with the front coming.
No more questions. I'd just like to express thanks to those guys who get out in these sorts of conditions and do this kind of cleanup speedily, and amazing that we're able to get that protection in there in the nick of time around Tupura Horonuku. That's excellent news, limit the damage. So if we could somehow pass on our thanks to those involved, that would be great, John. So I will move that the committee receive and note the information in the Director of Economy and Development's report. Seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Lewis, comment. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thanks. Last item, the Infrastructure and Regulatory Forward Program for 2025, page 89 of the agenda. Does any member have a question about that? I move that the committee receives and notes that forward program. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Mitchell, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Questions? I have received no questions. So we'll go to karakia whakamutonga. Mino tātou. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia i te uru tapanui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairoa i te ara takatū. Koia rā e rongo whakairihia ake ki runga. Kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia, hau pai mārere. I declare the meeting closed at